realfaith.org.au.
I was walking home from kinder one morning, and I remember saying to my mum, "Mummy, when's Dad coming home?" Now, Dad would travel a lot for work. That wasn't uncommon for him to be away. He'd come home and bring me bags of lollies. So it was, I don't know whether I was looking forward to seeing him or getting the bag of lollies. I'm not sure. But I remember saying, "When's Daddy coming home?" And Mum actually said, "He's not." And I just remember crumbling. I didn't understand why he chose to leave us. All I know is from memory, Mum had to carry me home that day.
Welcome to Real Faith. Conversations about the impact faith has on our lives and the challenges we go through, helping us today and giving us hope for tomorrow. That's real people, real life, and real faith with Eric Scatterbo.
When Simon Warrick was a child, he was given plenty of reasons to hold on to grudges and not be forgiving. His father had left the family for another woman, and later he felt mistreated by his stepfather. But the Lord has helped him to heal and forgive, and he is now teaching others the painful lessons he's learned. Simon has now been involved in full-time ministry for several years, and we'll hear his story today. Simon Warrick, welcome to the program.
So good to be here with you, Eric. So good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you with us. And, when I hear your story, I'm thinking, now this just can't get any worse. And then it does.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not telling you anything, but it just, all these things kind of like a Jonah story where one thing happens after another. But the good news is you're sitting here today, having been involved in ministry for several years, just started a new position.
Correct, yeah. Yes, I did.
We'll get to that.
Yep,
exciting things happening in your life. So
Absolutely.
It all ends very well.
It does.
But it starts very bad.
Pretty rough.
Yeah,
pretty rough.
Pretty rough, yeah. Okay, we'll get to that. Let's go back to your childhood. What was your childhood like growing up and where?
Yeah, so we grew up in the outer east of Melbourne. When I was born, we lived in Croydon.
Yep.
And
not far from here?
Not far from here at all, yeah. Just a few minutes away.
Yeah.
And was there till I was into about grade 1. So I remember little about my childhood, a few fun memories along the way, a few challenging memories along the way as well. But I guess for me, one of my most significant memories as a kid was walking home from kinder one morning. So I would have been 4 years old, somewhere around there. And I remember saying to my mum, "Mummy, when's Dad coming home?" Now, Dad would travel a lot for work. That wasn't uncommon for him to be away. He'd come home and bring me bags of lollies. So it was, I don't know whether I was looking forward to seeing him or getting the bag of lollies. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I remember saying, "When's Daddy coming home?" And Mum actually said, "He's not." Now, I could take you to the place where Mum said that. We were
He's not coming home.
Yeah, he's not coming home. So we're on the way home from kinder in a pipeline, which is, basically the shortcut home. And I just remember crumbling. I didn't understand why. I didn't understand why he chose to leave us. All I know is from memory, Mum had to carry me home that day.
Wow.
It was really significant.
Oh, yeah. So that had to be very, very difficult to go through. But what was your childhood like before that?
To be honest, I don't remember heaps of it. I remember some fun times. I remember playing with the kids next door, doing crazy stuff in the backyard with, the old metal slides, riding down the slide on a plastic 3-wheel bike and falling off the side. Just silly little things like that. It was just a normal, I'd say it was a normal childhood.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, though, when I spoke to my mum later about the story of my history, I actually found out I was the oops at the end. So,
what does that mean?
Well, so my brother's 10 years older. I've got a sister who's 8 years older, another sister who's 5, and that was going to be the end of the family.
Oh, okay. Unplanned.
And I was an unplanned pregnancy.
Okay.
And from what my mum has since told me, through the pregnancy, my dad just didn't want another child. He was actually wanting to have the.
This is sounding even worse.
Yeah, this isn't the fun bit, but this is part of the history, right?
Yeah, it is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So he wanted Mum to have an abortion. As a Christian woman, she refused.
Yeah.
And from what I'm told, he didn't speak to her for the time of the pregnancy. I'm also told that when I was born, the nurse dropped me in his arms and apparently I became the favourite. I don't know if that was out of guilt or because I looked like him. And
Oh, is that
reminded him.
right?
But I was the favourite child, and my
Your
siblings-
dad considered you the favorite
Yeah. Well, that's
after not
yeah.
wanting you at all.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So that was that's what my sisters would tell me. I was the favourite. Could have been because I was the youngest. I don't know. But
It's just because you're you, Simon.
yeah, and super good looking. Like
That's true. Yes, even back then as a baby. Wow, how could he resist? I should say that you and I know each other for several
That's right.
years.
That's
and,
right.
And I actually interviewed you about 12 years ago or so.
Yeah,
so it's
something
nice
like
to
that.
get caught up
Absolutely.
on all this. But yeah, very challenging
Yeah.
time there.
Yeah.
And so more or less a pretty good childhood. And
I
then all of
remember
a
it that way,
yeah. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, boom, he's gone.
Yeah. Yep. And it was before the days of mobile phones and before the days of
Yeah.
internet. So
Yeah.
we'd get to see Dad probably once a month. He'd come over
Yeah.
and give Mum some maintenance money back in the olden days where there was this thing called cash.
Yeah.
We used to use that as a currency here in Australia. So he'd come over once a month, pay Mum her maintenance money. So didn't get to see him a whole lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was. I mean, it's hard to say whether it was good, bad, or indifferent because I can't compare it with another life that I've had. It's just
Yeah,
the life
yeah.
that I've had. But things did become more challenging. So we start with.
But I just wanted to stop and
Sure,
back
yeah.
up. You mentioned that your mother is a Christian.
Yeah.
So was faith a part of your life growing up?
Yeah, it was. It was. So Mum and Dad both were Christians initially. They met in through church environments, I believe. But Dad, I guess, got focused on business and drifted away. Again, with the benefit of hindsight as an adult, when you start to understand more, you find out some of his family history and understand his history was pretty challenging too. He had a very angry father. His mother died when he was a teenager. And my dad was the oldest of his family. So his father put a whole lot of pressure on him to perform and to do well and take the lead in many things. And, being an angry man, I guess, with no context on how to manage that relationship, he did what he knew how to do. And so he just got stuck into working. He was a workaholic from what I'm told.
Oh, okay.
And that was his primary focus. It was the career and that sort of stuff.
And
So,
then his faith just kind of went by the wayside.
yeah, I think he just got busy working, I guess.
Okay. And then something happened, obviously. He was attracted to another woman.
Yeah. So he left us for another woman. He was actually judging a trampolining competition with the YMCA or something like that, and
Oh,
she
that's
was a gymnast who was one of the people in the competition. And from what I'm told, she pursued him. She was quite a lot younger than him. He was late 30s. She was 20 years younger than him, so she would have been
20?
late teens, maybe 20. It was quite odd. As a man who's 49 now, I look at it and just shake my head. But so she pursued him.
But it's an example of don't let this happen to you, because that can happen to anybody.
It actually can.
Yeah. So
It actually
it's
can.
a warning for us
Yeah.
all.
For sure. I think if I'm, to speak to the guys out there, you need to guard your hearts.
Amen.
Guard your relationships.
Because it's got to be flattering to the ego. Oh, this young person.
When you've got a gymnast 20 years younger than you
Yeah.
flirting with you,
Yeah.
yeah, sure.
And unfortunately, he decided that's the way he's going to go.
Yeah.
Leave
Yeah.
his family. How many children did you say?
I'm the youngest of four.
Okay, yeah.
And I guess he thought the grass was greener and jumped the fence to maintain the same analogy.
Now, you mentioned that immediately upon hearing that news, you just crumbled.
Yeah. Like any kid, I was trying to work out what I'd done wrong.
Oh, see, now that's so common, but so sad.
Yeah.
You blamed yourself. And if I remember right, you were kicking the walls and stuff. Just, what did I do?
You do have a good memory. Yeah.
I just listened to it again recently.
Yeah. I remember being maybe a little bit older than this age 4 and going through my childhood just out of desperation and anger, just kicking the walls of frustration, trying to work out what the heck and why.
Yeah. So,
know.
that's unfortunately all too common when things like that happen to our parents.
Yeah.
Children can say, oh, somehow it's my fault.
Yeah, and you don't think about – a kid doesn't view things through the mind of an adult.
Yeah.
And they don't reason in the way that an adult does. And even if an adult says it's not your fault, there's still something in them that will try and find out what they've done wrong. It just seems to be a natural inclination that kids engage with.
Even though it's technically irrational.
Yeah.
But it is very common.
Yeah.
So here you are. You don't have a dad anymore. And your father, you were his favorite. And obviously, all the fun things of life with father, that's all of a sudden gone.
Yep.
How did that impact you?
Well, it was pretty traumatic. To add another step to the process, because Mum was now a solo parent, she couldn't afford to stay in the house that we're in. So she ended up
okay. So even more ramifications.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So Dad left when I was 4. We're now so I would have been kinder. End of grade 1, so there must have been 18 months worth of Mum trying to work out how to work out finances. She was a stay-at-home mum, so she didn't have a career. She was a nurse.
Suddenly she's thrown into all that.
Yeah, yeah. So she sold up our house in Croydon, and we had to move to Lilydale, which that meant new place, new school, new everything, start again. So on the trauma of having to try and get my head around Dad leaving and what that meant, and the stigma around single parent families back then too, by the way, because it was, we're talking late 70s, early 80s. So we moved to Lilydale. It meant new school, and Mum made the decision after talking to a counsellor or whatever that the best thing for me to do would be to go to the new school for the last 2 weeks of the year, just to get to know some people, to familiarise myself with the place, and that was pretty challenging because I'd left all my friends behind. There was a new group of people. I was the new kid, and I remember this girl just bullied me. She was just nasty to me, and she was one of the teachers.
No particular reason?
I don't remember. I was the new kid with blonde curly hair.
Probably just because you were the new kid.
Probably. And she was one of the teacher's kids, so she had a sense of entitlement around that as well, I guess. Yeah. And I remember being promised she wasn't going to be in my class in grade 2. So grade 2 comes around, in the line in front of the classroom, and there she was. I was bawling my eyes out. It was really horrible because the idea of having to spend a whole year with this constant bullying was just overwhelming. God's faithful.
On top of everything you're going through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I had a moment, and this kid who was also new to the school wanders over to me and says, "Oh, are you all right?" And I said, obviously bawling my eyes out, long story short, his family had moved to the area to go to Bible college. He and I became best mates instantly, and I went back to his house that day. And we still stay in touch. He's moved to America now. Just had some kids recently. One of his kids is named after me, which is pretty cool. Middle name, not the first name. Well,
so still good.
So that's pretty special. So we've remained really close friends.
So the Lord provided a friend.
It's amazing in that moment. Yeah. And you look back on it with hindsight, and you can see the little steps of God's provision all through my life, and it's pretty hard to deny His existence. But in that moment, that's where we went. My friend came along, we became best mates. And school, I was probably seen as at times really quiet, at times a bit of a clown, But underneath it all, there was still just this carrying of pain and anxiety and hurt and all that sort of stuff that I wouldn't have been able to put words to. I just responded out of at times.
Our guest today is Simon Warrick, who's joining me in our Melbourne studios. As we're hearing, Simon experienced layer upon layer of heartache and pain as a child. Unfortunately, as we'll hear, things got even worse. Simon will share more of his story when we return right here on Real Faith.
The Word for Today is Australia's most widely read daily devotional, designed to give you practical teaching to keep you focused on your relationship with Jesus. Read it online or subscribe to the free printed edition at thewordfortoday.com.au.
You're listening to Real Faith, conversations with real people about how God works in their lives. If you want to know more about integrating faith into your life, our website is realfaith.org.au. Just go to the website and you'll find helpful articles about the impact faith can have on your life. Once again, that's realfaith.org.au.
Welcome back. I'm Eric Scatabo, and today I'm chatting with Simon Warrick, who's sharing his life journey with us. Before the break, we heard how, as a child, he was given plenty of reasons to hold on to grudges and not be forgiving. His father had left the family for another woman, and he was bullied at school. Now here's more of my conversation with Simon Warrick. And then things got worse.
Yeah. So 1985, so I was grade 5 now. I remember saying to Mum, I just want to go see Dad. Now, we'd see him maybe once a month. And for whatever reason,
Did you do activities with him, go places?
Occasionally, like he'd I mentioned I was the favourite.
Yeah.
He would take us to the show, for example, and my sisters would get me to ring him and ask because then he'd say yes.
Oh, okay. So there were certain advantages of being the favourite.
Yes, there was.
Yeah.
So, that and birthdays. So, it wasn't that often that we saw him.
So not ideal, but you still had a father-son relationship.
Yeah. So I said to Mum, look, I just want to go see Dad. And for whatever reason, she just really felt prompted, okay, I need to go take him to see his dad. So we went to Dad's house, spent, an hour or whatever just hanging out. I don't really remember. I remember him not looking well, but not really thinking much about it. Really shortly thereafter, and I remember it as weeks, my sister would say it was probably a little bit longer, but he was admitted to hospital. And what we found is that he'd actually had cancer. It was bowel cancer that had been in him for quite a bit of time. Dad was a workaholic, so he probably just pushed through it, I'm guessing. And it was actually terminal, and within a really short space of time, he'd passed away.
Wow.
It was, again, I remember it as being it felt like weeks. It could have been a month. I don't know. It was a really short period of time.
But bottom line,
he was gone.
No dad?
Yep.
How did that impact you?
Again, you look at it through the eyes of a kid, and I remember a guy coming up at school saying, "Are you okay?" Because I'd had some time off school, and I'd just come back. And I remember saying to him, well, he was old. That happens.
He couldn't be that old.
He was 45.
And you're 49 now.
I'm 49
so
now.
Then he was ancient in your eyes.
For a 10-year-old, 45, it's, not far off 70. But the loss of that and having to walk that out, realising that, okay, I wouldn't see him once a month anymore, going to his funeral and going, this is it. That's it, he's gone.
Yeah.
Quite bizarre. Interestingly enough, Dad had walked away from his faith. From what I'm told, he, in his last weeks, whatever it was, someone got wind that he was unwell and flew down from Canberra or something and led him back to the Lord.
Oh, okay.
Like weeks. Like it was the last moment.
But that gave you a bit of peace.
Well, I believe I'll get to see him again in heaven.
Yeah.
So as much as for the, God willing, 70 or 80 or 90 years that I'm on this earth without him, there'll be eternity that we get to hang out.
Yeah.
So
you can have some good chats.
Yeah, we'll have some conversations.
So going back to that time, now your dad's gone.
Yeah.
So more confusion, more questioning, God, why?
Yeah, lots of hurt, lots of pain, lots of not understanding. But again, on the surface, you may not have seen it. There was a lot of coping mechanisms that I'd put in place. I was a happy kid mostly from the outward. I was still going to church regularly. I had my church mates.
Now, would you say you were a Christian at that time?
Yeah. I'd given my heart to the Lord as a kid. I got baptised at 8 years old. My dad came to my baptism, and, and I'm told that was part of his journey back to faith.
Oh, okay.
So, you have those little moments along the way. So, absolutely, I was a Christian at 12. I went to China on a missions trip.
At 12?
Yeah.
Wow.
I still don't understand how Mum let me go with a group of people that no family were involved in, but that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
We went on a tour of China with about 80 people doing a production called Spindles and the Lamb.
What kind of a production is that?
Singing, dancing, puppets.
And you were part of all that?
I was the main character, man.
The main character?
I was Spindles.
No wonder why you were the favorite.
Yeah, well, there you go. So for those of you who have been Christians for a while, a guy called Barry Chant wrote these books about spindles, and this kid in the outback that had friends that were animals, and there was a red gum tree that was represented God, and
interesting.
It was great stories. I remember reading them as a kid, and then there was a musical, a stage play, Spindles and the Lamb.
And you were Spindles.
I was Spindles.
The things I'm learning about you.
Yeah. And the funniest part was Spindle's like this skinny kid, right? It was a nickname for a skinny person. I was not skinny at the time.
But you were such a great actor. They had to have you.
Well, either that or I was available. I don't know which. but yes.
You were the only 12-year-old kid on a trip, maybe.
Oh, no, there was a few other kids as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a whole cast.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was pretty cool that I got to do that.
Well, it's cool to know that despite all these terrible things happening, there were some highlights.
There were.
Yeah.
There were.
Yeah.
And yeah, but you go back to that time and you get to where things finished with Dad. So that was around October 85. Around, I think it was March 86, my stepmother at the time. So Dad had got married to this woman and she was seeing, from what I understand, a couple of guys that she was working with, and we got a call to find out that she'd actually been murdered.
Wow.
So, that kind of was a curveball that we weren't expecting.
Now, did you have a relationship with her?
Yeah, look, again, we'd see Dad, we'd see my stepmother. We'd spend time with her. I loved her. After Dad died, didn't see her a whole lot. Things were pretty messy with estates and stuff. So it was, again, I didn't really understand a lot of what was happening in the background, but the relationship was fractured significantly. But then to find out that she'd been murdered just took us by surprise. I mean, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't wish that on anyone.
But I mean, that's just another layer of challenges.
Yeah, and that was that's still there's no one that's been convicted of her murder today.
To this day.
To this day, it was on Australia's Most Wanted, and it was on $1 Million Cold Case, and just in the last year or two, there was a person who went to trial for that, but that person was found not guilty. So at this point, no one's been convicted with that murder.
So still unresolved.
Yep. No conviction made.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned that your father's estate, there was some complications there. We should say that, as you mentioned earlier, things were a bit tough financially because all of a sudden your mother, a single mother, trying to have a family with 4 children, but then to make matters worse and even more tight, some of the finances, your father's estate, that was hung up in some complications, or how would you characterize that?
It was. There was, from what I understand, Dad had kept an insurance policy that was for him, but for us kids. And I'm guessing he probably kept it secret from his then wife, just so there'd be something for us if something should happen to him. That estate was contested by her, and then after she'd passed away, there was no the wills were contested, and there was all sorts of stuff. There was nothing rock solid to say this is where everything is supposed to go. Dad had been a reasonably successful businessman, from what I understand, so he'd done pretty well for himself. And
so that money would have helped out.
Oh yeah, very much so. So that disappeared. Dad's estate, we didn't see any of that. Even his personal effects. So I wanted the pens off his table, like big pens, because
sentimental stuff.
They disappeared. From what I'm told, this person paid his parents to clean their house, and things got thrown out, and family photos disappeared, and it was quite. There was just nothing that we had. There was no historical things that my dad had that we now had access to. And again, just sentimental things was really what I was looking for. So that meant that we didn't get any of his stuff. All the financial resources were gone. There was no access to that sort of stuff other than this small insurance policy that that Dad had, and I think it probably gave us $10,000 each or something, which I used to go to China. That went towards China.
Oh, okay. But yet, going back to a major theme, you had plenty of reasons to be unforgiving and have bitterness and hold on to grudges. So that was yet another one.
And I'm 12.
Wow. Wow.
So the layers kind of kept going, and I say it with hindsight, and it almost feels like a crazy movie that just keeps rolling and keeps rolling. But that was my life.
But it even got worse than that.
It did.
Okay, we'll have to stop it right there for this first part of my conversation with Simon Warrick. He's sharing his life journey with us. Unfortunately, as Simon just mentioned, things will take a turn for the worse after this point as he experiences layer upon layer of heartache and disappointment. But we'll also hear how the Lord was still working in his life and will turn it all around. That's all coming up next time when we'll hear more of Simon Warrick's story and his insights into successful forgiving. Until then, I'm Eric Scatabo. So long, and God bless.
You've been listening to Real Faith, and if you have any questions or comments, you can send us a message through our website, realfaith.org.au. That's realfaith.org.au.
Real Faith is a production of Vision Christian Media.
This program is a production of Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, see vision.org.au.